Hey guys, how's it going today? Alright, my first gun project of 2011 is going to be this PolyTech M305, which is a clone of the US M14 or the M1A1 308 semi-automatic battle rifle. This one is third, fourth generation of the Chinese PolyTechs. Everything's pretty much stock right now. I've got a UTG base on it with Leopold rings and a very old Bosch & Lomb 3x9 sporting scope. So what I'm going to be doing is stripping it all down and bedding the rifle. Going to do a trigger job on it, probably just a polish. We're not going to get too carried away. This is not a bad trigger. It's a little heavy, but there's very little creep and there's very little pull out in this two-stage. Be doing a little bit of modification on the rifle or the scope base. It's catching up, and I'm getting some failures to extract properly. So we're going to do a little bit of relieving on the bases. We're going to bed it, trigger job it, and go out and shoot it, and see if we need to send it out for any other work that I'm not set up to or not experienced enough to do, and probably eventually give it a full Duracoat system. I'm just not a big, I don't like pure black rifles. I'm probably going to go with a very dark gray-green with a very dark black-gray finish on the metal parts. But that'll be down the road. Right now we're going to just start disassembling the rifle, pulling the scope off, pulling the base off, and getting all the rest of that good stuff cleaned up and ready to go. Okay guys, more later. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is move out this Leopold scope base. It's an extremely good system. It's works on the 1913 Picatinny rail or this Weaver style rings bases as well. The only problem is because the M14 was never really designed for optics, anything you put is going to have lots of eye relief. I'm a little low on the eye relief on this, but I can't move it back anymore. But you can see how it's right tight up against the turret rings. It's maybe a 16th or a 32nd away. I want to move it back one more point and get it a little farther back, so it gives just a little bit more length in between the bases and give you just a little bit more support for these rings for the scope. Now I'll probably end up changing this out to something, you know, a little bit tougher, a little bit more mil spec in the future. I was actually thinking of a Russian scope for it, but I just couldn't bring myself to do that. It's bad enough that I've got a Chinese copy of an M14. There's two reasons for that. At one point I owned a TRG M14. It had the bolt cut out as originally a fully automatic rifle, and I sold that before the new laws came in. The government at the time decided that because it was a fully automatic rifle converted to a semi-automatic one at one point in its life, that the average Joe could just go ahead and convert it over. Well, you know, typical government gun laws. So that type of rifle was prohibited. So you can still own them if you have that classification of rifle or that classification of license, but you actually can't get a permit to take them out and shoot. So they've rendered a whole series of firearms, you know, unusable. FNFALs, H&K 91s, 92s are all prohibited. AKs are all prohibited. You know, if a person has the proper licensing, yes, you can still take them out and you can still own them, you can have them in your gun cabinet, but you can't legally take them out and shoot. So the reason I have a Chinese rifle like this is the fact that I like M14s. I love the guns, but unfortunately, short of owning the Springfield M1A, which is an extremely expensive rifle and very, very difficult to get up here, I can't think of ever seeing a non-restricted version on the shelves up here. So thus the reason for the M14, or the Chinese M305 as they like to call it. This is my second Chinese M305. I have another wooden stocked one that I'm going to be restocking here in the near future, but I thought I'd start up with this one because the wooden stock one shoots extremely well, and this one needs some work. So anyway, I'm going to finish pulling these bases and rings off, get the scope moved back, and we'll get on to you later, guys. See you in a bit. Okay, now in these M14 scope systems in this UTG, they have you slide out the stripper clip assembly. You slide in another piece that puts in this Allen screw, and that holds the back of the base. And you can also adjust your windage with that, left and right, if you can't get enough out of your regular adjustments on your scope. So this has become quite loose, actually, almost only hand loose after one firing. So I'll have to keep that in mind. Now the worst part of it is, it took me about 100 rounds to get it sighted in. It was rough. But if you can see right along there, I'm getting probably 2 or 3 out of every 10 shots are hanging up on that lip. So I'm just going to take my Dremel tool or a file and relieve that portion and get it cleaned up. And this is all going to get bead blasted and recoated armor coat or Duracoat in the next couple of months. I'll probably go up to my good friend Dave Henry up in Bentley, the gunsmith up there, and use his bead blasting cabinet. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to clean that up, and we'll break out a file, and we'll show you what we're going to do there. So this is going to be a pretty simple fix. Just a file on top of the I'm just going to get down in here and remove some of this material. Keep everything nice and clean. You can pretty much see exactly where it was hitting. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this all down, bevel it to a nice even bevel. Now this is an aluminum mount. I would have preferred a steel mount, the Smith mount, or another one of the high-end mounts. But you have to draw a line somewhere. When the mounts are starting to be as expensive as the entire rifle, well, there is a little bit of value conscious in there for me as well. I found one Smith site online, steel mount, that was $450 Canadian. Now, I don't know, I haven't looked at too many of them. That just seemed to be awfully expensive when I only paid $469 for the entire rifle, brand spanking new. So this is $129 from Fab Sports out of Montreal. A great company to work with. They have carry a lot of products. Check their website out, fabsports.com, or go to Canadian Gun Nuts and you can hook onto them from there. So as you can see, I've pretty much completely relieved any of the areas that were getting hung up on this to begin with. Now this is advertised as a hardened aluminum, but boy, it's pretty doggone soft. So, you know, I've heard guys saying that, you know, you don't want to use an aluminum mount because aluminum heats up at different rates than steel and will cause a warpage and a misalignment of your scope. Well, you've got the entire receiver of the rifle, which is steel, to heat up, and then it has to migrate up into here. And if you're heating up your aluminum scope bases because of overheating, you're firing so much, then I'd say you've probably got a lot bigger problems on your hands without having to worrying about your bases, your aluminum bases heating up and changing shape and changing point of impact. If you're putting out that many rounds, you've probably got a lot bigger problems on your hands as it is. So that's something I'm not going to worry too much about. Okay, so I think we're going to call that good. Now I'll probably go over this with some sandpaper and clean it up a bit first. But for now, that looks like we've totally relieved any and all knocks where the ejected cases were coming out. You can just see we've got a nice clean silver line across there. So we'll leave that there, and we'll go on to something in our next step on this rifle. Now this is the first time I've used these Leopold Weaver style bases. I really like them. Normally I use burst steel rings and bases, but these Leopold rings are extremely well made. These are steel. They have 2 Torx bolts here and here to tighten down, and then you have a total of 4 up top, so you can get an extremely tough tight mounting surface. Now if memory serves me correct, the Burris Z-rings have a single slotted bolt there, and then 2 slotted bolts on the top of each one. So you're getting considerably more bolting action with the Leopolds than the Burris. I think I may be using these. They're a lot more expensive. They're almost $30 a zep more expensive, but you certainly get what you pay for with the Leopold products.